Welcome to Bite-Sized Learning. Lisa and I are so excited to share our third video in a series inspired by Peter Liljedahl's Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics. Remember, you can access our previous videos on our website.
Peter Liljedahl's book, Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, has shifted the thinking of many educators in mathematics and beyond around how institutional norms in education have encouraged the creation of studenting behaviors that often interfere with student thinking and learning. Over 15 years of research, Liljedahl identified 14 factors where he, in essence, turned institutional norms on their head to see how student thinking would be impacted. He ultimately refined his research into what he calls optimal practices that promote thinking. And those are what Jill and I will explore over this series of bite-sized learning videos.
Today, we're going to address where students work in a thinking classroom. Liljedahl tells us that one of the most enduring norms in mathematics classrooms is students sitting at their desks and writing in notebooks. They sit and do now you do tasks. Often students spend more hours of their days sitting than anything else. I encourage you to take a wander in your own school or shadow a student for a day. How much time are students sitting? How much time are they sitting in rows? Essentially, because the workspace was always the same, rows and sitting, the student behavior was always the same. Students would show studenting behaviors such as mimicking, stalling, or faking. They were not prepared to think deeply about their subject matter. Liljedahl's research also points out that students who are sitting feel anonymous, and when they feel anonymous, they are less likely to engage. So what happens when we ask students to stand up, to talk to each other, to sit in groups? Or better yet, to stand in groups? In the images here from grade 9 maths classrooms in the WRDSB, we see students standing in groups, talking to each other, using whiteboards and markers to engage in deep thinking tasks. They are thinking about math and interacting with math. They are not anonymous, but instead they know their peers, they work with their peers, and are active learners. Liljedahl suggests students work standing at vertical non-permanent surfaces with one marker per group. This results in students that took more risks, were eager to participate, their work reflected the thinking process, and there was greater mobility of knowledge within the classroom. Liljedahl ran many studies that looked at different workspaces and conditions. His research found that when students work in groups at vertical non-permanent surfaces in close proximity to one another, the environment not only supported thinking, but necessitated it. He tells us that when students get into their groups and start working on vertical surfaces, the skills they need to be successful are things like communication, perseverance, patience, self-reliance, etc. These skills are needed in every classroom and in everyday life. So it is important that we model them and give students lots of opportunities to develop and practice these skills. The ideal place for students to work in a thinking classroom is at a vertical non-permanent surface. This allows students to easily erase mistakes, takes away anonymity, necessitates thinking, and builds other important skills. He offers these micro moves that can be used. Have only one marker per group. Move the marker around within the group. Sometimes have the rule that the person writing cannot write any of their own ideas. Have groups in close proximity to each other. Talk to the students about valuing wrong ideas and not erasing each other's work. These micro moves and the macro move of using vertical non-permanent surfaces is something that can take place in any classroom. Now, Lisa's going to share some examples with us.
While working on non-permanent surfaces may not be commonplace in all classrooms yet, we'd like to offer some ideas on how you can normalize their use in your classroom. Before we start with examples, we'd like to acknowledge that not all classrooms have walls lined with floor-to-ceiling whiteboards. That reality doesn't have to be a barrier to using vertical non-permanent surfaces. There are many alternatives to whiteboards: chalkboards, windows, and other surfaces around the room that can be wiped off. Wipe books or dry erase pockets are great. I've even heard of teachers using shower curtains taped to the wall. Use your imagination and get kids standing up. And in a real pinch, though not quite as effective as non-permanent surfaces, according to Lily Adul's research, chart paper can be substituted for dry erase surfaces. One way to bring vertical non-permanent surfaces into all classrooms is to use them for community building, social emotional learning, or metacognitive activities. They are a great way to establish class contracts or community norms, debrief social emotional learning around stress management, or to encourage groups of students to reflect on their learning at the end of a class. In geography, vertical non-permanent surfaces can be used for freehand mapping. A laminated map can also serve as a vertical non-permanent surface that students can annotate on top of. Notice and wonder is a great thinking routine that students can engage in after being prompted with an image, dataset, or headline. And students may also use vertical non-permanent surfaces to represent the data that they've uncovered. In English, students may gather at vertical non-permanent surfaces for pre-writing activities, such as idea generation through words or images. And in science, vertical non-permanent surfaces are an ideal place for students to draw representations of data, their observations of an experiment, or to engage in collaborative problem solving. To conclude today, we'd like to encourage you to consider this question: how might I use vertical non-permanent surfaces in my classroom to not only encourage, but to necessitate thinking? No matter the subject area, we can all ask our students to stand up, work in groups, and use vertical non-permanent surfaces in order to build skills such as communication, perseverance, patience, and self-reliance. If you give this a try in your classroom, please let us know. Thank you for watching. Next week, we'll explore furniture arrangement in a thinking classroom.